Okay, so we are here with Alex, top 4 at Bristol Regionals, playing an unbelievable tournament. First of all, how did it feel?
Amazing. The games are very intense, but I love the intensity of the game. You know, it really challenges you. At the end of the day, we're all here to have a brilliant game and brilliant time.
So what we'll do is we'll go over what you played. So you played an awesome deck into this as well, different from what the conventional meta is at the moment. Do you want to go through what you played?
Yeah, definitely. I'm very excited to share it. So we'll go through the units section by section. So we're, first of all, Fall of Friths. I mean, it's a bit of a no-brainer. You know, we're in a rush heavy meta, especially a lot of 2/2s and 1/1s. Having high HP unit is very critical. Additionally, going against red, blue as well, having high units is high HP units is very critical. They can't burn it efficiently enough. I actually had matches where I was against a red-blue player. A lot of the cards are just burns. They can't double burn you, otherwise it's a 2-for-1 and it's just not worth it. And we had 3 turns where I just spam units and go for 1 giant 6 attack for the win. There are plays that could that'll be slightly different, but I'll go through that later. But Fall of Friths, definitely. 3 Rick Diaz. I would prefer like the 4th one. However, mainly just making a slot for something else, and that slot is the striker pack. But 3 Rick Diaz, they're not as good, mainly because it blocks a 2/2. Then you get pinged with I think it's like 12 pings in a versus a Blurple matchup. It's not as solid, but a lot of people, when a 2/2 swung into Rick Diaz, they actually opted not to block. It's situational, but most importantly, it is important for you to block. You're forcing resources out of them. There's only a certain amount of ping and utility that they have, and if you don't force it out of them, they just get to keep it. Later on in the turns, one big giant swing, you can't do that to prevent it. You have to trickle them down bit by bit, force them to use their resource. If not, you get another unit, you get another block, and that's all the difference between either you get another turn to slap down your big units for the to control the board, or you don't. So 3 Rick Diaz, but there's definitely a level onto using them. So next up, one of my favorite units in the deck, Balanoak. One of the amazing things about this unit is it is a 2 cost. And if you're going first, for example, playing a blocker and playing this, able to stop your opponent, again, forcing them to use utilities to go through. And having this set up for the next turn is really important, because if your opponent is swinging, that means they have rested units. You have a repair too. You put down a Kira, a Muro, even Paptimus. Having that option to kill 1 a 5 HP unit, so Gundam Muro, is very critical. And 2, your opponent has to answer it because it's got the repair too. It can keep eating 2/2s and just getting it for free. It also links with Paptimus, so there's so many utilities you have this where when you set this up an earlier turn, you can play another one later, link it with Paptimus, give target this, draw, and still attack at the same time. There's also other really technical plays you can make. For example, putting Paptimus on a link, so it gives your Perfect Strike, L Strike with Kira repair, getting those blockers back up into HP, which can defend another attack or 2, is the make it or break it. And having this extra link is so critical. I wish I could have run a Surf off, but deck space is never easy. But probably one thing I would love is to put 4 of them. Next up, this is blasphemous for me even to say this, 3 Gundams, not 4. Reason I go for the 3 at the end of the day, ultimately, it is a 3 cost. It doesn't curve well enough. Against Blurple, they will develop more units against you. And if you are on turn 4, let's say you've gone first, and you just play 1 unit, which doesn't really get to impact anything. If you don't have a Muro as well, you they are just duds in your hand. The repair is great because it sets up for the O later. If you don't have it, and the standalone card is not as good as it sounds. And what's very more critical is to have it on, able to develop more units on board. It's great to have the link, but if your opponent has 4 units, 5 units, and you Gundam and Mirror get one of them, you're not exactly happy either. Another blasphemous card choice in numbers, 3 L Strike. Now, L Strike is a brilliant unit. I do not deny this at all. Able to return Rizels, Chakrans, even blockers for you to attack into the shield for the game. Amazing ability. But one of the critical things about Kira, especially with Ale, is Kale is a mirror. Kira doesn't actually Ale Kira is a mirror. And what I mean by that is if you are able to develop units and attack with it, great. You get tempo, you bounce, you get a 6 HP base, brilliant. But against Blurple, again, you are on the defensive. What tends to happen is the only instance where Ale is really good is your opponent has done the first swing, which is usually 2, maybe even 3 damage, or hopefully 2 if you're lucky. And you get to return fire with this. It kills off the tempo, but Ale doesn't do anything on its own. Again, your pilots in a blue-white deck is so critical. If you can prevent using it as much as you can, you need to hold off on it. So, and a unit that doesn't do anything on its own, it's a blocker by no means, but it's a 4 cost. You can't curve well. And especially for a deck that wants to go second, that extra resource is so critical to you. You can't spend it just to return fire to stop your opponent, but then have no follow-up play. You are just prolonging the problem. You have not actually addressed it in kind. And that's why, and with the replacement of the L Strike, 2 perfect strikes. Now, what's interesting is that they kind of have similar abilities to some extent. The deploy effect, roughly, I only used it like once this whole tournament, which is roughly like 14 matches or so. It gets a gun tank, it gets a Leo, and it's great when it triggers off. But the emphasis of this unit, it is a 3 cost. Now, why is that so critical? Is because, again, the amount of 2 costs I will have in this deck, you're going to see more 3 more striker pack as well. There is enough that in turn 5, again, if you're going first or if you really need to defend on going second, developing 2 units is so critical. How many instances have you ever seen with Blurple where your opponent's heart just sinks when you play 3 blockers down? They can't go through and they just pray for a Muro, or they swing and they have to use utilities, but which we're getting units anyways. You're not sad either. And so that's 1. And 2, if you are going second, turn 4, you have 5 resources with an EX. Playing a perfect strike, playing Kira, a 6/5, you don't get to bounce, but you get to kill a 2/2, and your opponent again has to deal with a 6/5. Blurple. So on turn 5 with 1 EX resource, you can link with Kira, attack, get one of your opponent's 2/2s, and you're keeping your EX resource. That later on is just so critical for the O. Ideally, you always want the O on curve, and I'll go into why later on. But you are having to set up Kira with perfect strike and able to defend, or having the option to develop 2 units, keep your EX resource while linking is too critical. Sometimes I actually prefer a 3 perfect strike to maybe even 2 L. More testing needs to be done, but keeping your EX resource for blue-white deck is too critical. A turn ahead is the make it or break it difference. And again, I emphasize developing 2 blockers. 3 Masala. Surprisingly, Masala is not something it's almost like I'm forced to run this. It makes a 7/6, really good stat. And why is it such a good stat? It's a 6 HP, and it kills Gundam plus a Muro on your turn because they will have 5 AP. It survives onto the 1, repair the 1, and even just keeping a unit with 2 HP, it is much more painful for the Blurple player to use 2 pings to kill it. It is a lot of commitment, especially 2 damage, even 3. So you don't see a lot of 3 damage ping in one turn. If they do, they're the main character. But able to link this or set this up for next turn for the O is very critical. And again, 5 AP, you can play this, stopping a Gundam Muro. If they rest it, they rest it. Again, you probably see a lot of emphasis on the cards that I'm choosing now. A lot of them, then there's only 1 or 2 that like needs something else for it to work. One of the reasons why Blurple is so good is the units do things on them with themselves. You don't, sometimes there's 1 or 2 that does need the link, like Gundam, the first forms, etc. But having units that just do things on its own, on scenarios that just frequently occurs, is very critical. In a game of Gundam where you want the link, etc., having pilots to link in order to make really big swings is one of the most important factors, but you can't have too much. A deck building choice I always go for is that if usually you choose 2 or maybe even 3 pilots. You can't, generally speaking, you shouldn't pick pilots that has 2 pilots that has both conditional link only in order to get the effect. Otherwise, you're going to run into a lot of problems. Unless you have a lot of units that can link with it, otherwise you're going to see a lot of duds in your hand. It's a Jupiterus, it defends. Again, it's a 4 cost. Notice how a lot of them is level 6, 4 costs. There's always another space for 2 costs to develop another unit. You will be able to keep up with the card advantage. Optimus, it helps you draw. Show off the show helps you draw. Overflow will be able to choose certain things. It gets you the 2 units per turn, and that is one of the key things to defending Blurple. They will run out of utilities. They're not always going to get 4 Muros, and you will stabilize with enough blockers on board. The start of the show, 4 O's. So shout out to Team Strike, which is one of our teammates. And we spend a lot of time talking about the win conditions of Gundam. Now, the game has developed to a point where we're starting to account for the bursts when you attack. It's not always swing, get as low life as possible, because you're going to expose yourself to potential return fire with link units and go for the game. What's interesting is that with the O, it has an alternative win condition, which is if your Gundam is a unit-heavy focused game. If your opponent doesn't have units, your opponent has no threats. Therefore, you can do whatever you want. Now, why is O an alternative win condition? Well, if you are able to, using the ability to continuously rest down your opponent's units on the turn that they played it, so that you can get rid of them and repairing on top, your opponent ain't gonna have any units. So having 2 O's, and even just the pair, this is why, again, the emphasis on the pair. You can put down generic units, it will get the effect, you can start clearing your opponent's boards, and they are gonna run out of links. So if you can clear your opponent's boards enough, you have essentially won the game. And that is so critical. Doesn't matter if your opponent has 6 shields and an EX base still. If they're out of cards, they're out of units, and they can't attack you, you have won the game, because you will develop enough blockers so that even if they link, the options is gone, and you have 2 massive units to repair where you're just getting free stuff. You have won the game. So one of the key win conditions to actually Blurple is not to clap back, is to set up the O, 1 or 2 of them, so that when you start attacking, you rest the entire board, you go. Doesn't matter how much units they have, you're gonna repair, you're gonna rest them down, and you're gonna destroy them for free. So that's unit count. We're gonna go to the pilots next. A lot of them I kind of like gloss onto over, but we'll talk about this. For Amuros, I'll touch onto the point. Generically good pilot is one of the best in the game. There's no doubt about it. It's essentially a removal. There's a lot of effective techniques you can use into Amuro. The way I love seeing using Amuro, and I'm gonna start talking about with the pilots, with the units, is Saman becomes a 5/4. You can then kill Gundam Amuro for 5 AP. Anything that is 3 AP, so Rick Diaz, Frith, and you get to repair 2, and even just Blurple in general, you're getting units for free, and it's a 5 AP, which is really hard to deal with. Amuro is basically a removal for my deck. It's a premium removal, find you. Similarly, with Lefrith, if one of the key threats against a Blurple is using first forms. Your opponent plays first form onto the field. If they set it up on turn 3 and you have a Muro, 9 times out of 10, get it off the board. You have Lefrith, you have a Muro. Your opponent you are expecting them to do an Adept next turn, just so that they get the draw, and you defending with Lefrit, you are -1. That is not good enough. If you are Muro, you get the first form. Even if they, let's say they double pinged you to die, for it to destroy, you have got a unit, and you have forced them to use 2 pings in order, and they will have less utilities for the following turns to build a full board for the returns, for the accumulative attack. Another same idea for Rick Diaz. It's not ideal, but it is a 5/4. And of course we know Gundam, so you can start to see that even for Air Strike, we love an Air Strike Amuro, is denying your opponent of a unit and able to rest them down so that you can then kill the unit that's outstanding. Of course, it requires the Elder setup first on the previous turn, but it is still very important. So Amuro, key unit, you want to remove key threats to your from your opponent's deck. Don't use it for Rick Diaz, don't use it for Lefrith, because you can. There's plenty of players which on their turn 4, they see Gundam Amuro, they do it to get a Lefrith, and you go, right, but do you really need to attack this? It's not threatening your board. It's not doing anything against you. Let it live. Save this for something much more important later on. Next idea, 3 Kiras.
3 NTC Kiras too, baby.
Shout out to Luke for getting me my 3rd Kira. Again, Kira is top 4 pilot in the game. Why do I still run a first 4 off? Your main reason is you have to get your opponent to attack first in order to utilize Kira to its full potential. Kira, by nature of design, wants to attack units. Once you've stabilized the board, then you attack the shield, right? Attack the shield. By nature, if you see this early on, you have to kind of bait your opponent to attack. You need to dangle, there's two shields that you get to hit, or maybe 3 shields that you get to hit if you commit certain resources. But it's almost like you are baiting them to use a premium volume of resource so that you really push them back. And that's why it's a 3-off. If you got it early, it is brilliant. But when you start drawing too much pilots, it will clog up your hand, and you're so busy defending. The blockers are already doing their job individually. You don't always need to support them fully. And having too much pilots to clog up your hand just the game is not win on pilots. The game is win by units primarily. So 3 Kiras. Finally, for Paptimus, it's from my understanding, one of the really top pilots in the game as well. You have to build your deck around it, but if the deck is designed, it's worth the reward. 9 times out of 10, you build around it in order to get the reward fully. I could go into more, but having +2/+2, able to get, I look back into the units because at the end of the day, it's a support. If you're desperate, Lefrith to get into a 6 HP so that you are stopping your opponent from Amuroing to win. They do have other options, they would need Mika, something to ping, followed by Amuro. But again, they need the combination to get it down, which means less chance for them to do it, which means you can stabilize one more turn, and the rest is history. 4 AP is also brilliant as well. Salman, we talked about it before. If you can set up a turn early, turn 4, put a Lefrith Salman. What tends to happen, I see, is that Lefrith box gets 2 damage from 2/2, etc. If your opponent can't deal with it, you get Biolinks, Paptimus. You can heal your blockers so that they survive longer, so that it's much more of a pain for them to deal with. Don't see this as a draw 1. The repair 2 is much more impactful than people make it to be. A good example is, let's say, not even else. I see them the same, to be fair. So it's much more versatile than it looks. The repair also comes into with the O later. There's plenty of instances where, for example, on the turn for the O, your opponent had 1 unit swung, and sometimes you don't block it. You need a rested unit. You can clear 3 units by playing the O on curve. Ideally, this happens quite frequently, to be fair. You link with Paptimus, the obvious choice, everyone's going, I got to draw 1, I got to utilize fully. No, remember, your win condition is not damage. Your win condition is getting your opponents enough units and keeping this up, and you win the game. Putting it onto the perfect strike to attack one of their rested unit, it gets repaired 2, you get a rest, a level 5 unit, then it happens again, and it happens again. You've killed 3 units. That 1 draw is nothing in comparison to removing your opponent's threats, so you get more time, show off resolve, more blockers, etc, etc. Not to mention, it's a 7/7. They have to commit so much resource just to get rid of it. Now, bases. Very simple, for Kusanagi. Because of the nature of the O, again, with the win condition, not alternative win condition, Kusanagi is covering your weaknesses. And your weaknesses is lots of tiny units for which it can hit you, and that's it. So having Kusanagi to play this in order to return Rizal or tokens, even a 2/2, your opponent needs to play it. That's potentially 1 more turn, 1 more damage for you to stabilize with 1-0, or God forbid 2-0, with stabilize with 1-0, or maybe it's even 2 O's. It buys you enough time. 4 AP is requires more from Blurple to reach that. A lot of them reaches around my 3 AP, so having 4 is actually really difficult. There's so many instances where my opponent has 1 gun tank and 1 2/2. Even if they have a Gundam Amuro on the board, he goes into 3. I'm forcing my opponent to use a Gundam to hit the Kusanagi. Kusanagi being in 4 HP is so critically important, because as Blurple, trying to get into 4 AP is quite tough. They have to use more resource than it looks. Because a lot of them are 2/2s or 1/2. Even with Gundam Amuro, they have to use the Gundam Amuro to hit the Kusanagi. That just means they can't remove a blocker, and you've essentially stalled them yes, they can double hit to kill it, but that's one more damage again, one more hit. So Kusanagi, especially when it's bursted, preventing your opponents to being rushed is very important. You probably notice a lot of the times I'm talking about like against Blurple, it's existing meta is that it's against Blurple. But however, into the late game, the alternative win condition, especially with high HP units, allows you to focus more onto the rush, so that into the later game you are able to repair, you are about to play really beefy units, and you should have it covered. Last and final, we'll go into the commands. For overflow affection, sometimes it's thank you, Jiren. I really start enjoying the Gundam community where they are experimenting with 3 overflow, 2 overflow. Now, you have to have a reason for all the ratios that you decide to bring into a deck. Otherwise, that's why you're Earthmark. Yeah, there needs to be a reason for all the ratios that you've put into the deck. Now, my justification is that for the overflow affection is the deck, whilst a fair few amount of units doesn't need pilots, the key unit requires pilots for it to work. Removing an overflow affection for something else denies your chance of getting a pilot, getting even a key unit, and that is a big no-no in blue-white. And having these is very important, just so that you're cycling stuff. And if you are against certain matchups that you don't need the rush prevention package, so your Kusanagi, your Rick Diaz's, you get rid of them. They are duds, and you need to get something more useful later on for more control-heavy variant decks. 3 striker pack. If you burst this, it swings the tempo to you immediately. It's another body. It's a 3/3, and overall, if you burst it, it's still good. If you don't, playing this for a 2/4, still brilliant. There are even some cases where I played this and get a sword strike. Now, against anybody that has red or even against purple blue. As I mentioned earlier, you're forcing the pings out of your opponent. They will be exhausted. It's not forever. And having a 4 AP unit that they cannot get rid of via ping because you've exhausted them is very important. It's not always a 2/4. If it's early game, yes it is, but it's not always the case. I implore you to see what your opponent has rather than just imagine they have everything. If I draw them, it's not the end of the world because I can still utilize them. To show off resolve, I would love to run a third one because I think the draw is very important. However, 2 is sufficient enough. Optimus draws you enough, and you should be able to out-tempo your opponent, because let's say you and your opponent is playing Show of Resolves. Show of Resolves is by no means a cheap card. It is a 3 cost. Even towards later the stage of the game, you want to play 2 units, you can't afford it because you play a 3 cost. It's really tough on you. So 2 is fine. You draw into your outs, and again 3 costs into a 2 cost to play a blocker is very important. Last card, one unforeseen. It's really weird. It sounds like why you want one of for something. Thanks for Jiren to convince me into adding this. And the key reason why is unforeseen is if you have your board set up, it's essentially a tempo taking card. Your opponent's losing a unit, or your opponent not able to kill the unit that it wants to intend to kill. Then afterwards, you can then swing back with repair, with the support. It's gonna make it or break it the game. You don't want to see it too often because it's almost a win more card. It's so conditional, and that's why it's just a one-off. And that's it for my deck.
All right, so quickly we'll just go through the matchups just quickly list them for the day one. What were your matchups?
So day one, round one, I won the dice roll and I went second. I was against a Tekkadan Savior, which is much heavier and very aggro-y, trying to push forward. But I stalled and stabilized enough so that I get the O link on curve. I wipe their units. Doesn't matter what they put down anymore. My repairs keep coming out, and I win the game that way. Round two against Blurple. What's interesting is they went second, so I didn't expect that to some extent. But again, stabilized, got down to 0 shield, and I was about to have everything. My opponent ended up having the Rebake, Gundam, and then Amuro. Unfortunate, it is what it is, but 3-card combo, it do be like that. Round three, I was against Blue-White. Actually, the O player. I went first. However, my opponent isn't able to establish the board well enough, and what ended up happening is when I have 2 units on board, so I had something along the lines of, Rick Diaz, Lafrith. I start using my Gundam, my Amuro as a way to rest my opponent's units, and then just attack them because they don't have any ping. So I can keep up the aggression, use Aerostrike to return things, use Kusanagi to return things, able to get the tempo and go gun for the game. Round 4, I went against a clan deck. They rushed me pretty hard, but again, alternative win condition, you're gonna see the same trend a lot of the times where you're not you're waiting for the return swing. 6 units is what you are looking for, minimum burst risk, and go for game in one fell swoop. And sometimes when you're stabilizing, you can get rid of your opponent's board, jab 1 or 2 so that it's risk-free, and then when they have 5 shields, 6 units, and you maybe even have a link in hand, gun for the game. Round 5, again, went Blurple. Honestly, they ran out of gas. Forced enough utility so that they can't push any further, survived around 2 shields, and set up 1-0, and that's all it needs to start the pendulum moving. Round 6, again another Blurple, same comment as before. Round 7, I was against a red Azaf deck, and it's really interesting with Azaf deck against a red-white because you need to keep an eye on their resources so that the battle basis comes in, the improved technique comes in. It can bypass the repair. So if your opponent has resource up, you cannot trade so freely, or you're gonna trade into them. They effectively burn you. You lose a key unit, and remember, the O wins the game. However, if they're able to get rid of it via burn on effectiveness, you're not gonna be able to survive. So at some point, you have to push, but jab your way as you're pushing, and then go for one big swing later on. Round 8, I again went against Blurple. There's so much Blurple. I think when I go up to from round 8, round 9, all the way to final top 4, they were all Blurples. Same trend. Stabilize. My opponent saw 0 on Muros. What's actually interesting is he has 6 units on board. I had around 4 and 5 with Kusanagi, and I'm able to block the high AP units so that Kusanagi can take 2 hits, and that's all it takes to buy another turn. My opponent saw 0 on Muro. They have 3 shields. I actually didn't attack them on the off chances that they did hit the Muro and I lose the game. Build up your board, one big swing for the game. And that is it for our matchup.
And then finally, obviously, top cut.
So, top cut. I initially went against a Blurple person, and same comment as before, just make sure you're stabilizing. Your opponent is swinging. Sometimes you actually want them to hit the EX shield. If you can get 2 hits from the EX base, that's a brilliant job. So sometimes you don't actually have to block every time. And another thing that happens is if your opponent swings, that means you can hit back with Perfect Strike Kira. You set up while you've defended your opponent, and everything rolls from there. Then the top 8 was very interesting as I fought against a blue-red player. Lots of burns, lots of unit removal. Which means, however, they don't have enough units on board. So what ended up actually happening is we had like 3 turns of me play a unit, end, play a unit, end, play 2 units and end. And then for round of turn 5, turn 6, 1 major push, get 5 shields down. They cannot burn enough. If you have 4 HP is so unique. That is so difficult for them just to burn. 3 HP, great. 2 HP, great. 4 is really difficult because that means they either need to set up the Kshatriya Merida, for which you're gonna try to get rid of anyways, and or they have to commit 2 cards. This is not something that they want to do. And with repair, you're gonna get it's a really similar argument. Last round, I fought against another Blurple, and again, I feel like I'm a broken record at this point. It's all about the defending, it's all about trading efficiently and able to stabilize, then the O will win you the game.
So there we have it. It's been a lot of preparation, of course, as well, going into weeks and weeks and weeks of preparation as well. Obviously now you have your invite. So, and obviously you're going to be playing GDO 4 as well in this. So that's really exciting. So we're obviously getting more reveals to see what is coming. How are you feeling about going into that? Hard to know, obviously, what we're going to be expecting metal-wise there. How are you feeling going into it?
I'm very excited. I think Gundam has a very good future ahead of the future sets. They're introducing new mechanics, and slowly but surely the game will get more and more complicated. The game is complicated as it is right now already because your breed is the foresight. But they're releasing new mechanics. You get to do different things with your new cards, so it's going to be very exciting. You know, I'm looking forward to the impulses, Force Impulse, Destiny, overall.
And so like any final words?
Final words. Shout out to my teams. Shout out to my team, Alex, Duran, and then also Adam. They has helped me so much. Also, not to mention, all the locals from Ipswich able to give me the relative practice to get very comfortable against these rush matchups, developing the methodologies to defend against them, and able to get up to where I am. I couldn't have done it without them. I know it sounds cheesy, but it is what it is exactly just that. You know, love your community, and they in turn will help you and love you too.
Well, there we go. Team Strike, well done. We're proud of you. And we'll have to do a follow-up video as well to see how it goes. But awesome.